Hello, everybody. Welcome to Finding Your Soul show. And today my guest is the lovely Jen Compton, all the way from Queensland. And we are going to be talking about worthiness because it's my last show of September, which means that we're going to be diving into the conversation about worthiness for the last time. And then we're going to change our topic next month to something completely different. And now for something completely different. So welcome, Jen. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Pip. Thanks. It's great to be here.
So we are, yes, I've been talking to my lovely folks here at the show about a few different concepts that have come up when I was writing my book and the journal that I have created as well, the companion journal. And one of the topics was worthiness and feeling like you're a worthy soul. And so I wanted to get a few different perspectives on that. So before we were coming on, I said to you, what is your perception or what is worthiness or self-worth to you? And you said something that surprised me. So I thought I'd start with that.
Yeah, I said that it brought up feelings of judgment, and I felt a little bit uncomfortable with it, as if I was, it was the parent in my head admonishing me or something. So yeah, I asked you to give me a few more synonyms so that I could sort of get my head around it. Yeah. But I have been thinking a little bit more about it since that discussion, and having read a lot in my life and seen a lot of wonderful movies, I've sometimes wondered what my sense of self-worth would be like if I had a disfigured head and a disfigured face. Yeah. And I was perhaps of a colour where the culture didn't accept me, or I had a religion and I had to wear certain things that the culture might not accept, or if I had, a hideous disability that people couldn't even bear to look at my face, or my body was just huge. All of I haven't had to face those challenges in my life. So when I go out on the street and I go to a restaurant or go shopping, I don't have anybody staring at me or not seeing my soul, my spirit, because the appearance is getting in the way of that. But if all my life people had been giving me a hard time because of how I looked, I think my self-worthiness would be really, it'd be a challenge every day I left my house. And so many movies play around with this theme. So I think
worthiness is about acceptance then too.
And respect for yourself. But because I've kind of always fitted in, I look okay, my weight's okay, I'm kind of, in that window of acceptance, that the self-worthiness, as much as we can talk about it, our appearance and the appearance of others, it just unconsciously, the judgment just jumps into your head. And one of the challenges, for me at least in life, is seeing beyond the appearance, going beyond that and connecting in a heart-to-heart way. And I think as I get older and I see the aging face in the mirror, and I think I'm maybe becoming a little less distracted by the appearances and really wanting to connect with somebody else's soul, on a heart-to-heart level.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That reminds me of the TV show that's on at the moment called The School That Tried to Combat Racism, and they're teaching the children about the assumptions that we make about people from what they look like on the outside and what's actually going on in terms of that person. And there was an exercise that they did where they had to say what the person's job was. And there was like 6 people in front of them, and the kids had to say, this person's a CEO, and this person's a dancer, and this person's a nurse, and this person's a whatever. And I think they only got 2 of them right. And then they were all surprised. It was like, oh, you know, the woman who looked really funky fresh, who wasn't wearing a suit, was actually the CEO. And then, you know, they were like, oh, we picked the dancer. The dancer looked quite muscly and, you know, stood in a certain way. It was quite interesting, but it was very apparent that they were making those decisions based on what the person looked like. And so that is an interesting.
Yes, isn't it? I mean, I think that every time I see an African, I think, oh, wow, imagine every time you go outside your door, people, you know, you're the minority, and people are, whether they like it or not, they're seeing you as very, very different from the norm. And to me, it's like a constant battle that you're sort of playing every day. Actually, I do have one of the poems in my book is called Racism. And it does deal with this, you know, about a woman going out every day and feeling that she's going to be talked about or
I mean, so, even people who are not, you know, are not the same color as everybody, you know, that sort of conversation is really interesting. And that's a whole nother conversation altogether, isn't it? That racism conversation. But I remember when I was in Africa, and I was walking down the street with my boyfriend, who's English. We were walking down the street, and I remember feeling very, very overwhelmed and uncomfortable with the fact that he and I were the only white people walking down the street. And although that's not
racism, it's just that you're feeling different.
Just a discomfort. Yeah, it was just discomfort, because it was like, whoa, this is weird. I'm out of my comfort zone. But in terms of worthiness and the way that we feel about ourselves, whatever we look like, you know, there are plenty of people out there who are very good looking, very successful, you know, have lots of money, you know, all of the things that we would sort of kind of associate with, well, they must feel worthy, they must feel like they deserve what they have, and they don't. So there's a degree of, like you say, acceptance and self-love, and there's something about that within ourselves, you know, deservingness that it comes to, so no matter what the outside looks like, you know.
Yeah. And it's coming from our own head talk, and I think the way we were spoken to when we were children by the people who brought us up. Because we believed what they said. Sure. If they said we were wonderful and we could achieve anything, we'd believe it. And we'd also believe the same if they said we were unworthy and we were never going to amount to anything, we'd also believe that. So, and I mean, apart from the fact that we are white middle-class people, which puts us wherever we are in the world, we kind of have this entitlement that I think we find it very difficult to understand not to have it, because it's always been a part of who we are and who we identify with. So it's and of course it depends on who you're with. Like you were saying, in Africa, it depends who you're with and where you are. It depends on your context. So you and I know, don't we, that we feel the most worthy when we're with people who like us and we can tell they like us, and when we feel safe, and when we feel a sense of comfort and joy, then we feel worthy. And then we'll go to be in another context and we won't have that feeling. It can be a little bit of the shifting sands there, I think.
Interesting. Yeah, and that's an interesting concept as well, that we're sort of moving into that space of, are you chameleoning yourself into being what other people want you to be, rather than staying authentically you in your worth and your, you know, that's kind of part of our, you know, practice as evolving souls, is to try and stay as centered and aligned as we can, no matter where we are, and not get too caught up in, oh, I have to be this for that person, and I have to be this for that person. That's, for me, that's what worthiness, what the practice of worthiness is for me, is to stay as true to myself as I possibly can.
I'm going to be the devil's advocate here.
Please do.
And I'm going to say that there are many people that I have in my life where I just become the space. This is my act of love for them. I become the space so they can just be who they want to be.
Yeah.
Because if I am my authentic true self, it just sort of gets in the way sometimes. So I know who those people are. And I have friends who, you know, I know they're going to push my buttons, and I think this is good for my spiritual practice. But it's not about giving up my authenticity. I know deep down who I am, I think, and as I get older, it probably becomes clearer. But it's a way of me giving love to them, is to let them be who they want to be. So if they want to talk about the politics that I might not agree with, or any opinions that they have, I just try to be the space and listen, a bit like a journalist might, where, you know, you want, what I want most is for that person to feel comfortable with me. And the best way I can do that often is to listen to their opinion and to ask them more about themselves. Yeah. So do you get where I'm coming from with that?
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely a grace, you know, a gracefulness in that, of like letting the person be who they are. And even if they're not really as accommodating for you to be who you are in some cases. I guess and the fact that you said that you still know your worth underneath that, I guess what I was saying is that if you are swaying completely out of yourself and changing yourself to be, there's a difference between being, you know, accommodating and allowing of people to have space and knowing your worth, and shifting completely and going, oh yes, I'm all of those things just so that you feel comfortable. Do you know what I mean? There's like a difference in
absolutely.
that.
And one of my poems, Your Role, I don't know if you've read that one, is all about that. That's right. There's only, you know, it's one thing for me to say, oh, if I'm catching up for afternoon tea, I can be the space for you. But it's another thing to live your life like that, and to compromise your ethics or things like that you don't hold true. So yeah,
for sure. So that's sort of leads me into the, you know, the Life's a Mango book that you wrote, which is beautiful and has all these wonderful poems in that, has come from a really interesting space because you decided to write these poems when you weren't very well. And it's interesting how when we're not well, when we're not at our fullest, healthiest space, we can get into that space of feeling unworthy and not in a good space. So do you feel like that was what the impetus to kind of write the poems, from that space of not feeling worthy, or was there something else underneath?
No, it was really the inspiration of watching His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Eckhart Tolle talking about things like social and emotional learning, and just watching very inspiring videos that really spoke to my heart. And I just had this feeling that I could put down in rhyme what they had said, had taken them an hour to say. I could just write it very succinctly in rhyming verse. And I don't think I'd really thought about how much I loved rhyming verse, but it just seemed to flow out of me. It was like the universe just wanted to use me, you know, to get it out there. But yeah, if I hadn't been, what I did learn was that to be creative, you have to be very relaxed. And so I guess, you know, post-viral fatigue or chronic fatigue, I couldn't have been more relaxed. Like, you know, it was the most relaxed I could be. I was just lying in bed. It was like I'd surrendered, you know, just use me, take me, here I am. And that's where it came from. So no, it was more the opposite, actually. It was more like wanting to write down things that really inspired me.
That's cool.
So yeah, and interestingly, yesterday when I was doing my audio book, I remember one of the quotes from Eleanor Roosevelt, and it was about how nobody can make you feel inferior without your consent.
Right.
But of course, that's again, it's about the context we're growing up in, or our head talk, and who we relate to, and what we believe, isn't it? About that talk that we believe, because so often they say that our own head talk, we give ourselves a harder time than we would do to a friend. You know, we can be very harsh on ourselves.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
yeah, so sometimes I think we do need to say those mantras. You know, it's okay, Jen, you're okay, darling, or you know, you are worthy. Or if you feel that there are little things in your life that are a challenge, well, just treat yourself like your own best friend. And yeah, I think it can help, because we do, apparently the psychologists tell us, we do have negativity bias, and we tend to think negative things more than the positive sort of muscle in the mind. So
yeah, we definitely latch on to, I mean, every person can say, you know, the first time that they were criticized, or the first teacher that was mean to them, or, you know, the first review of your book that wasn't good, or whatever. You know, you can always remember those, like, with precision. But all of the lovely things that people have said to you, we don't necessarily remember all of those. So,
and especially if your first love language isn't words, you can actually almost reject them or get embarrassed by words, can't you?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, it is an interesting one. What about you, Pip? What does worthiness mean for you?
Yeah, I think I've sort of had I've had a few conversations about this over the last few weeks, and it's interesting how each different time I talk to a person, it takes it to another level in terms of what it means for me. And I guess when I think about the, you know, times at school, when I was younger, or in my family, those sort of moments where you didn't feel like you were as good as someone else, that for me is where the worthiness kind of connects, in that there were moments where I thought, oh, that person's smarter, or that person's faster runner, or, you know, that person has more friends. You know, that was one of the conversations that I keep remembering, that I had difficulty with fitting in with the groups at school.
Yeah.
And for a long time I thought that was because I wasn't good enough for each of those groups, that I had to keep leaving the group and going somewhere else, because each of those groups just didn't feel right. And I thought,
like the ugly duckling story.
Yes. Yeah.
Had to find your tribe.
Yes, exactly. And I felt, it was years later that when I started doing the personal development types things when I was in my 20s, that I realized that I was choosing to leave those groups because I didn't resonate with them. They weren't rejecting me. I was thinking that was what was happening, that, oh, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, not pretty enough, whatever. And so I have to leave. But it was me that was choosing to leave. Do you know what I mean? So actually I actually had the worthiness and confidence in myself to get up and go, this is not working, is it? And that's leave. Right. But at the time I thought that I was being rejected, and that I didn't, I was very concerned about whether I was being liked or not.
I think so many people, as you're speaking, will say, yep, that's teenage years for you. You know, we're trying to find out who we are and which group we belong with. Do we belong with the really cool chicks? And we don't want to be with the daggy ones, and we're trying to find our tribe. But as you were talking, I was also thinking about how, you know, on MasterChef they have that what do they do, where they give each contestant different ingredients. Yeah. And I think life is like that too, isn't it? You've been given a set of ingredients to make a certain cake, and I've been given my own set of ingredients, and it just seems crazy for me to want yours and you to want mine, because we're going to come up with different things, because we've been given different gifts and different ingredients. So but the main message is, no matter what how your cake turns out and how mine turns out, they're both worthy, aren't they? Because they're going to look different, and they're going to smell different and taste different, but they're still a manifestation, an expression of universal love or whatever.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm just thinking of my poem Confidence. Would you mind if I recited that to you?
Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
great. Because I'm thinking this is the one that most aligns probably with worthiness.
Yeah.
Confidence. What is confidence and how does it look? Do you have to be rich, perhaps written a book? Does confidence come from your charm, your wit, the houses you own? Are you friends with Brad Pitt? Perhaps you have beauty and you're well educated, or a famous someone and more elevated. None of these factors give us what we seek. For confidence is something that comes from so deep. It radiates out an invisible sun. Its warmth is felt by all, everyone. Confidence is something that cannot be taught, a wise, deep essence of love that shines forth. There's no more fear, no worry or shame. You see, we're all connected. Who needs all the fame? To others, you may seem quiet or odd, but they do not know your essence is God. You feel without doubt you're connected to all. This deep conscious knowing is the ego's downfall. You accept who you are. You embrace all the others. You see beyond form. They're your sisters and brothers. Others may want it. They're not sure who you are. You're nobody special, yet you've come so far. This confidence comes by saying yes to the now. It goes beyond self and brings peace somehow. There's no more worry. You no longer compare yourself to your neighbor or someone out there. You just enjoy being, because that is enough. There's no need for extras, all that fancy stuff. So be content with the one who you are. Feel the presence within and shine forth like a star.
Gorgeous.
And as I was reading that, Pip, I thought about that Australian, I think she was an engineer who got really, really badly burnt.
Yes.
What's her name? Starts with T, doesn't it?
Yes.
Or something, or Tamara Pitt, is it? Or
yep. Yeah, I can't remember her first name, but yes. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, again, I keep on coming back to this idea of worthiness and how it's not just about what we see in the mirror, but it's how other people see us and how they treat us. And I think she's been a great advocate for worthiness because she has just sort of had the confidence, I suppose, to say, no, I'm still the same person, even though my appearance is so different. But of course, she's not the same person, because what happened to her with those burns would have taken her on a completely different journey, just like Stephen Hawking or others. You know what I mean?
And there's a difference, I guess, if someone has not had a disfigurement or an issue when they were younger, and then they do later, compared to somebody who has had something happen to them and they've been like that for their whole life.
That's right.
And that's where it's so interesting, because that worthiness conversation doesn't have anything to do with the way that you look, and yet we do put a lot of credence in that. We spend a lot of time, social media and the TV, there's so much focus on the way that you look and how important it is. And that's something that these sorts of conversations are really important, because they remind everyone that is not the most important thing about us, and that we need to come back to that space of knowing that we're okay, that we're actually, a soul, in this body, rather than the body being the most important thing.
And the thing is, like the Paralympics and that sort of thing are really shining a huge light on all this, isn't it? About what's normal or what's acceptable. It's becoming wider for us, which is a great thing. Whereas, when I was growing up, that wasn't the case, at least where I was living.
Yes, exactly. And that's the thing too, isn't it? Like what you're exposed to as a child, our parents and our grandparents didn't have the exposure to the things that we do in terms of media and and that sort of thing. So it's very easy to, judge now. We have lots of judgment. As coming back to what you were saying at the very beginning, there is a lot of judgment that is part of our culture. So
it is, and I think as parents, we really have the responsibility of watching the language that we use with our children. Of course, we can only use the language that's a reflection of what's going on in our own mind as well. But we do have to be very careful about what we tell children, because they believe it about themselves. And we've all seen those examples of like kids with maybe Down syndrome who've grown up in families where they're completely accepted by the rest of the family and treated like all the other siblings. And you can just see their sense of worth just shining through their face, because they've never been taught to believe anything else.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely that's a beautiful way of giving that I was about to say giving worth to the worthiness conversation. It's so interesting, because it's the separation of the way that we look from the essence of who we are. And
what I really want to believe everything I'm saying, but if I became completely disfigured and I looked completely different to how I am, I know I'd really struggle with it. And I know I'd walk out the door and feel embarrassed, and there'd be so many demons for me. So it's one thing, like, I'm really grateful that so far I haven't had that challenge in life. But even though I can talk about all this, if it really happened to me on a personal level, I think it would be incredibly challenging. Because sometimes I think our own sense of maybe embarrassment or unworthiness gets in the way. So someone else might not be treating me in that way, but I'm putting up a barrier and putting layers on things that perhaps aren't even there.
Definitely.
The idea in my poem about the confidence of just shining out love, trying to shine out love for ourselves and for everyone around us, it kind of works in all contexts. But
absolutely,
some people are really given some ingredients that are pretty hard to make a cake with, aren't they? They're given ingredients in life that is a challenge. Like those times in MasterChef where they got, what do they get? Like a slab of butter and they go, what am I going to do with that? Well, some people's life is like that,
It's definitely, I think that's why human beings are fascinating, because they are all about the overcoming, no matter who you talk to. As I say, you might think that somebody has it all together and everything's great and they look great and they seem to be great, but they will have different types of challenges. And potentially, there is, a worthiness, something undercurrent. So you never know what's happening on the inside.
No, you don't. And if we had their circumstances and their karma, well, we'd be exactly the same. But you can see why inspirational speakers earn so much money and get and draw the crowds that they do, because people just want to feel good. They want to feel that best version of themselves, and they want to love themselves and feel great. And sometimes we need to hear it from other people before we can believe it ourselves. But I think it's like a daily dose. This sort of thing. It's not just one big lightning flash. It's something we feed ourselves, feed our soul, feed our mind every day. Is this sense of I'm okay, you're okay. We're all in the same boat, and we might look different, but we're all worthy. And it's easy to say it, but we'll be challenged every day as to whether we're giving that sense of worthiness and respect to our fellow human beings. Because sometimes the unconscious judgment or prejudices will inevitably come up. But you know, that's life, isn't it? It's working with those challenges every day and meeting them head on and acknowledging them.
Definitely. That's the perfect way to finish off today. I think that's a great way to end it. But so just to let everybody know, the lovely Jen Compton has written this book, as you can see behind her, the Life's a Mango book, and I have a copy too.
Oh, me too.
Yeah, so do you. And the Life's a Mango is all about, it's a guide to awakening through rhyming, mindful rhyming wisdom. And so each day you could open up the book, like I have been doing this month, open up the book and read something inspiring each day. And if you want to get a copy of the book, you need to go to jencompton.com, right?
That's right. Yep, absolutely. And I will send it to you wherever you are. And it will be signed, and it will also have one of my very special and unique bookmarks. Yes. So please.
I like the bookmark.
You just open it serendipity, Pip, don't you, every day?
I do.
And just read a poem and see how it
I kind of like that. Once upon a time, I wouldn't have been able to do that. I would have been like, no, I have to read it from the beginning to the end. But I have grown and changed over the years, and I now am a bit more like, let's just see what the universe has to tell me today. So really appreciate your joining me today. Thank you so much for your perspective on
it's made me think a lot more about that word. It's not a word I think about very often, so it's been good for me to sort of chew over that a little bit.
Thank you so much. And we will be starting, as I said, a whole new topic for next month, and so join me again at the Find Your Soul show next week. Thanks everyone. Bye.